Estoy aquí con la crema y nata de lo que es la parte directiva empresarial de Deloitte, una compañía de carácter mundial. Aquí con Barry en la parte mundial, con Paco, con Francisco en la parte nacional, que entre todos aquí en Cancún, en la Riviera Maya, están tratando de ver por dónde va el mundo. Y Barry, first of all, thank you for being with me.
Pleasure.
What do you foresee about the economical situation of the world after the crisis of 2008 and the actual situation?
So I think today it's much more stable than it was a year ago. Yeah. We're in an environment where the world has, different parts, and each has a different story. Okay. So if we start with the United States, for example, I think the United States is actually doing pretty well. Consumer confidence is up, unemployment is pretty stable, housing is strong, and I think that the market is getting back to a good, stable growth. And our business is actually doing pretty well in the United States as evidence of what I just said. And I see it pretty strong.
And I think also that for a certain period of time, the United States gave others the work to do things and just bought them. And right now they're doing...
I think now manufacturing is up in the United States. Energy is an industry sector that I think will do well in the United States. So there's a tide that has turned, I believe, there. Unlike in Europe, for example, where things have stabled a little bit and we're not as concerned about the destabilization of the euro, nonetheless, it is a tough market, sluggish growth. While our economists are suggesting a turnaround within the next year or so, we're seeing very little evidence of that broadly throughout Europe, so it continues to be a concern.
Wouldn't you think that Europe needs a change that is kind of old in certain structures, and the workers kind of conceited? They don't want to work a lot. They want to work.
It's a tale of two cities, right? There are parts of Europe where I think that the evidence would suggest that productivity is not as strong as one would like, but I wouldn't suggest that that's true throughout Europe. And I do think that there's reforms that have been put in place in some of those countries to try and change that, to move it in the better direction.
Though unemployment is
unemployment, particularly for youth, a big problem in Europe, in Spain, in Greece. Good examples of where the unemployment needs to be dealt with, because that's a time bomb. And so I do think that when you factor that in, there's still some major issues in Europe that will take some time to evolve. There's some structural changes perhaps that will need to be made. I'm not an expert at that, and I know that having spoken to a number of clients and a number of dignitaries in Europe, everyone appreciates that there are issues that need to be dealt with, but there are no solutions ready right now. But I think sluggish at best. You go to emerging markets, some questions there. They're slowed down tremendously. China, for example, much slower growth than ever anticipated, even at this time.
At 8%.
But at 8%, it's fast for other markets. But in China, it's kind of slow. And I think that the government is doing the right kinds of things, focusing on the right issues to try and get a higher level of growth in China, a greater level of competitiveness in China. I feel that it's slowing down. Our business has slowed down, and so there's a direct correlation there. But I think it's still a good market, and we will see continued investment. But if you look at Mexico, for example, compare Mexico to China, there's going to be some competition there, I think. Good workers, labor pool, young country in Mexico.
Raw materials.
All of the above will come together.
Situation.
Put it together, I think that Mexico could be a force to be reckoned with in that regard, competing with China in some respects.
If we modernize our structures.
Of course, there's work to be done. I think I shouldn't be telling you that.
What about Japan? Because we kind of skipped Japan. And I think Japan is doing a very interesting job and an influence to the...
Totally different than in the past, right?
Oh, yes.
Just a unique monetary policy and a unique leadership that has been very aggressive for Japan culture and for Japan history. And there's evidence that would suggest that it's beginning to work, and that this could be a good transformation for
Can you imagine
Japan.
The comeback of Japan? Because we are focusing on China all the time, and we kind of tend to forget what Japanese are able to do.
Absolutely, but Japan's going to need to, in addition to dealing with its economic situation and the policies of the current government, they're going to need to reinvent themselves from an innovation perspective.
That's right.
They were once the innovators of the world,
and
now Korea is there, and other countries that are really making strong advances. I think Japan has got the ability to do it. I think that the people in Japan are very much a creative and innovative source of good stuff but they have to really drive it.
And I deviated. You were talking about Mexico and probably Latin America. Brazil was like a phenomenon 5-7 years ago, and all of a sudden it lost the space, and I don't know, needs to catch up because it accomplished a certain growth, a certain size, and all of a sudden it lost it.
It did, and that, by the way, I don't know if that's terribly uncommon for a country that size to have sustained growth at the rates that it was having without having a bit of a slowdown, a rebuild of infrastructure, a rebuild of the commitment to its populace. It's not surprising to me, frankly, but I think that the most recent uprisings in Brazil, put a question mark on what really will emerge from this period. But I still would say keep an eye out on Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
A great economy, lots of inbound investment into Brazil from places like China, for example, and elsewhere. And I think Brazil is, certainly from a Deloitte perspective, is a place where we're investing. Another place, by the way, is Africa. Africa is really an emerging market. Huge amounts of people, huge amounts of resources, and growing in sophistication and, I think, global presence. There's lots of inbound investment. There are lots of issues that need to be dealt with in Africa, including areas like corruption and things of that nature. But I would suggest that Africa is a place where we have our eye on, and we think that there could be great potential for continued investment. Businesses are looking to invest in Africa, but they're going in very, very slowly.
But it gives me a different message to what I thought that was said at the end of the 20th century, that Africa was going to be the headache of 21st century, and well,
I'm not sure.
Perspective.
I actually see there are definitely issues. So let's not kid ourselves. But I do think that over the next 10 years, 15 years, I think Africa is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
So as an overall, you are an optimist?
I am. In personality-wise, I am.
Personality-wise, but also you are in a position that you can see.
Yes.
And that's important. You can see the world, you can see what's going on. Deloitte has influence all over the world, and you can actually have reports of the real thing in the countries, and you tell me that things have a viability for the next 5, probably 10 years.
We just made a commitment for a 3-year, $750 million investment in 11 specific markets because we're optimistic.
That's good news. How many people do you handle?
We have 200,000 people today.
Only?
Our expectation is 250,000 by 2015.
Is that right?
Lots of mouths to feed.
Lots of mouths, and also a lot of talent.
Huge talent.
You're a reader, you're like a tank, a thinking tank that has to deal with business, but always with a proposition, with a standpoint that is a Deloitte standpoint of view.
Absolutely. When you have 200,000 people in the market serving clients, you always have new ideas. You learn new things. You can re-leverage it into the market for the better of a particular industry sector or a particular kind of company. And I think that the power of who we are as an organization lies in the quality and the skills of our people and the innovation that they bring to every day's work.
Do you ever sleep?
I always sleep, thank goodness.
With good conscience.
With good conscience. You got to do the right thing. You do the right thing. You lead with the right tone. You can sleep at night.
It's a pleasure, Barry. Thank you very
much.
Francisco, ya oímos aquí el panorama de cómo se ve el mundo con Barry. ¿Cómo lo ves tú en México? Se ha hablado a principios de esta administración que iríamos por el momento mexicano. ¿Lo ve Deloitte o cuáles son los puntos a resaltar para que lleguemos realmente a eso?
Mira, Pedro, gracias por tener la oportunidad. Primeramente te digo, somos optimistas también en México. Vemos que México tiene oportunidades de crecimiento en la economía, pero hay cosas que hacer. O sea, no podemos estar esperando que sucedan las cosas sin tener una posición activa. y hay cosas que se tienen que mejorar y tenemos que ver cómo hacer ese mejoramiento para no dejar pasar las oportunidades. Ya lo comentaba ahorita Barry, la posición fuera de México hacia México es una posición optimista. Se siente, se ve que es una economía que puede resurgir. Entonces nosotros tenemos que tomar esa oportunidad. Tenemos que ver cómo tomar esa oportunidad, porque los inversionistas de afuera quieren ver a México así. Claro. Entonces nosotros tenemos que resolver muchos de los temas que tenemos.
Ahora, dentro de los clientes que tienen una cartera, me imagino, enorme de clientes de empresas establecidas ya en México, con un carácter y una esencia mexicana, ¿les ves una actitud diferente? ¿Les ves realmente con una idea de reinventarse, de innovar, de estar constantemente evolucionando hacia lo que pues tendrían que ser estándares internacionales, corporativos de un siglo XXI?
Mira, como en todo, tenemos de todos. Tenemos de todas las personalidades en los empresarios, pero las empresas fuertes de México sí tienen esa actitud, sí quieren ser competitivas porque además están con vistas afuera de México. Muchas de las empresas quieren ser internacionales y para ser un jugador internacional tienes que elevar todos tus estándares.
Y ustedes como empresa tienen dentro, me imagino, dentro de su misión el tratar de dar ese mensaje a sus clientes para que todos tengan mejores prácticas y hagan las cosas mejor.
Y no solamente el mensaje, que tienes toda la razón, ahí entra mucho el rol de Deloitte. Deloitte verdaderamente les puede apoyar para poder subir, para poder elevar ese nivel, ser un competidor internacional.
Para mí, que soy chiquito, ¿es caro Deloitte?
No, no es caro, porque nosotros lo que vemos siempre para nuestros clientes es el valor que le podemos dar. Y si eres capaz de llevarle valor a tu cliente, nada va a ser caro.
¿Se va a pagar?
Se va a pagar solo.
Es decir, ¿es caro con respecto a qué? ¿No?
Exacto, será caro si no llevamos valor. Y la premisa de Deloitte será siempre llevar valor, si no lo estoy haciendo bien.
Pues eso es parte de lo que ustedes se dan cuenta de dos personajes para mí clave de la economía tanto del mundo como de nuestro país, con la perspectiva de un Deloitte que me acerco a ellos porque tienen la capacidad de ver cosas que a lo mejor nosotros estamos un tanto en otra posición y no vemos desde lo global una silla mundial como la de Barry, una silla nacional tan importante como es la de Francisco, nos ponen en la perspectiva de hacia dónde vamos. Y ustedes que están ahí del otro lado de la cámara, nos tendríamos todos que dar cuenta de que vamos hacia un mejor tiempo, un mejor país, una mejor forma de hacer las cosas. Y eso depende mucho de organizaciones tan estructuradas y con tanto pensamiento como esta que está aquí. You might fall in love in Mexico, eh?
I love Mexico.
Oh, you're already in love.
I'm already in love.
That's good to know. Thank you, Barry.
You're very welcome.
Muchas gracias.
Al contrario,
Paco, por
Pedro,
estar
muy
aquí con
amable.
nosotros. Gracias a ustedes. Yo espero que haya muchos que se motiven. Si están estructurando nuevas empresas o ya las tienen establecidas, no se vayan solitos. Yo creo que hay gente que les puede ayudar y estos hombres le saben hacer, ¿eh? Y van a encontrar, estoy seguro, un camino de mucho más progreso. Acuérdense que una cosa es llegar y apachurrar el botoncito y otra cosa saber en dónde está. Gracias.